Hello and welcome. I am Maria Cosme, also known as Brown Girl Interrupting, and this is Pain to Power, our show where we are taking our pain and turning it into our power by making our struggles into strengths. And tonight, I am super excited to be introducing you to my guest in just a few moments. And I want to share a story because, this has been a lot of trying times, and a lot of things have been happening in the world, particularly yesterday. We know it was No King's Day, and there was a lot of protests and people out there because there is harm being done all around us. And many of us are trying to feel like, well, what do we do? What can we do? And if you are possibly an educator, but maybe just a informed and wanting to be involved citizen, part of that is allyship. And so I was thinking about this a lot because a lot of times we wonder, what is our role in making change? And this week, I had an opportunity to be in a school, and there was a leader who was a white woman who very openly and vulnerably told an entire staff with majority white women that she herself had had white saviorism when she first started in education. And she told a story of how that came out for her. And I watched as her whole school listened intently and then had to really reflect on that. And I bring this up because that is leadership. Leadership requires vulnerability. Leadership requires honesty, self-reflection, and it requires us to know the tools in order to not just say we're going to make change, but make the change. And what I'm excited about is that tonight we're going to get some of those tools from my amazing guest and brilliant colleague and friend. Please welcome he is a professional development educator as well as the co-founder and co-director of the BOND project, that's Building Our Network of Diversity, and the esteemed author of the book, The Antiracist School Leader, What to Know, Say, and Do. Please give a warm welcome to Dr. Daman Harris.
Hey, good evening, families. Good to talk to you. Or maybe it's good morning where you are in your part of the world, but good morning to you.
Good evening, good morning, or whatever time we're watching this. So thank you so much. I love it. Yes, and look, we've already got some folks in here. I know someone I met at the Bond Academy recently, Dr. Sonia Matthews. Good evening. I'm so happy for you to be here. And please make sure everyone who's joining us, make sure that you are liking. You are going to be in our comments. You subscribe to this channel so that you are here all the time with us on Brown Girl Interrupting on these stories of pain to power. So welcome, Daman. It is such an honor to have you here. And I know that we've been back and forth in getting you onto the show, but you're here, which is amazing. So it's great to have you. How are you doing today?
I'm really excited to be here, especially for a Sunday night. So I'm not usually this excited on a Sunday night, so it works out really well. Unless I'm watching you. And I just want to shout out. I just saw, like you said, Sonia Matthew, Dr. Matthew in the chat, and she was on Dr. Baruti Kafele's show yesterday. So you got some star power in this space.
Shout out to you, Dr. Sonia Matthew. And that is amazing. I love that. And congratulations. It's good to be in good company. We got a lot of folks here. So Daman, I know that we're going to be talking about education. We're going to be talking about your book and everything, but I always ask everybody who comes on the show, because the story is really that the purpose of this show is how we turn our strengths into our struggles into our strengths. And I am curious to know what everybody's understanding and connection is to turn pain into power. So when you think about that for yourself, what does that mean to you?
The models that I have from my childhood through my adulthood is essentially, and many of your viewers have probably thought about this metaphor before or used this metaphor in terms of pouring into people. And people have always poured into me as far as I can, as long back as I can remember. There's always somebody helping me to grow, always somebody pushing me to be better. And I grew up in a circumstance where I had a teenage mom, teenage dad, high school, and we grew up in the inner city, not very wealthy, in fact, not wealthy at all space. And my community poured into me as a 4 or 5 year old. As I remember, I write about it a little bit in my book. I just spoke to one of my kindergarten teachers 3 weeks ago. I'm saying the same thing. She poured into me, and where a lot of people could have written someone in my circumstances, could have written me off. And all of us in that space were all, at lower income folks who were at various stages of education and all kinds of jobs, and 2 and 3 jobs some folks had, and childcare and other responsibilities. But folks always had something left to pour into me. And what I've learned, that no matter what I'm going through and how much I might struggle, um, I always have enough left to pour into someone else. And
Mm.
sometimes that looks like talking to folks. Sometimes that looks like writing something. Sometimes that looks like loaning money. Sometimes that looks like just listening, and being present for my friends, my family, and folks that I'm just meeting for the first time. Um, I always have something left. And because people always have things left for me. Like I
Mm.
just talked to Dr. Marvin Lynn, who's out at University of Colorado Boulder, Dean of Ed out there. We met over the years, but he's just recently just said, "Hey man, I got a little bit of time. I can pour into you. I can help you out with a project." Uh, it has always been that way in my life, and that's shown me that I should always be that way in other people's lives. So I think that is probably the biggest lesson I've learned from my struggles to now, is that even when I think I don't have anything left, there's always some left to pour into other people.
That's so important, and I appreciate you saying that because, that pouring into others, as you're saying it, right? It's like it's the power to be able to accomplish so many things, to see yourself in things, right? To get through the challenging times. So that pain to power journey of having community that's pouring in and then doing it for others is really awesome. And I think about it because I literally, so I have a course that I started, and one of the things that I've been encouraging everyone to do is how do we pour into ourselves or
Mhm.
find the people that pour into us, because we cannot pour from an empty cup. And
Mhm.
oftentimes people are trying to. So you are really helping to keep pushing, filling other people's cups, as a leader. And I appreciate that. And that's huge. So, I mean, to that point, I think, you started to talk a little bit about your upbringing and your childhood. Let's go back there a little bit. I think we have a picture here because you have a picture in your book, a beautiful picture of two different moments. Where you are
Hi.
got there. There we go. Right.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about this top picture and what the significance is for you to have opened up your book with this. Like, what is the story behind this little Damon?
So I am in that top photo. I am the third from the left. I'm the second from the right. And this is the 45, 47 years ago in Wilmington, Delaware. So I'm wearing my Wilmington shirt. I try to represent Wilmington everywhere I go. In back in this like 1977 or thereabouts, in the outside of my grandmother's house next to the curb. And this is water that is there with my cousin and a couple of my friends, my childhood friends. There's water going down that curb, and we are playing in that water. Where I grew up, the swimming pool that was close enough for us to walk to wasn't exactly the best place for me to be. And the swimming pool that was a lot better for me in terms of safety and security. That wasn't close enough to really get to on a regular basis. So in my neighborhood, what happened is some of the older folks, or younger, ne'er-do-wells would go and open up the fire hydrant at the top of the block. And big people would play when the water came out up top. The little folks would play downstream. We get progressively younger as we got further away from the water source. And that image for me is one that I look back on thinking how I was literally playing in the gutter as a child. right? Like with my friends and family on a regular basis. And many people would have written me off, would have written all of us off, because I played, because of my level of socioeconomic status, because, like I said, I had 2 high school parents. Folks would have written me off. And people who didn't were my kindergarten teachers. And those folks showed me, and they said it to me explicitly, but they also showed it to me in their efforts and in some symbolism that that not only could I be great, but that greatness was expected. And everybody in Wilmington who came through where we came from, in my neighborhood, everybody was expected to be great. And you were expected to pull folks along with you when you did. And one of the symbols, and I have it somewhere around here, is the Charlie Brown dictionary that my kindergarten teachers gave me when I left. And it was their way of symbolizing that I was a great reader. I was a great writer, even at 5. Like, you were special. You're going to be great. So you need to make sure you do that and bring us with you, bring everybody with you. And I didn't get that message very much when I left. When I left kindergarten, throughout my K-12 experience, where somebody said greatness is expected of you, no matter, because we believe in you. But that message, along with some messages from my mother and my church, but that message gave me sort of direction and guidance and said, you need to keep growing, you need to keep doing, you need to keep being. And when I became an educator, I learned that education gave me more than I put into it. And that second image at the bottom is where I am pictured, but you only see my feet. And that image is of a vacation that my children and my little nephew, we went to the Dominican Republic, and they are playing in the water as well, but in a pool in a villa in the DR, not my house, right? I'm not there yet. Somebody, they're going, now that I'm with you right now, Maria, now I may get there where I do my but like that showed me the power of people who poured into me, that there isn't any, now my kids don't have to play in the gutter because people poured into me, because people believed in me, because people taught me that greatness was expected, and not just a possibility.
That's huge, though, Damon. Like, one, first of all, I think it's beautiful how you juxtapose those 2 pictures. Like, it's such a powerful way. Again, like how there's so many elements to your book that I loved, right? And that's one of those, I think, that beauty of seeing how our stories don't just start at where we end. They always start right at the beginning, and there's so many layers in there, right? But there's so much beauty, but also that struggle within that. And I love it, because what you're telling us is how the power of socialization when we choose to pour into others with that, right? Like, we really do have this power as adults in children's lives. And even if you're not an educator, because I just saw Just One Love, welcome Just One Love, my Ranters fam. So I know that we're not all going to have educators in here, but know that this lesson, these learnings, this book, and the tools that we're going to find out today are really transformative for all of us in the way that we treat humanity, right? And that's it, that intentional socialization. I want to go back there a little bit, because as a child, you talk about how it helped you and it was important for you and it empowered you. What were the things you really thought about yourself? Like, what do you remember thinking about yourself in those early childhood moments?
Yeah, when I reflected on that, as I was writing the book, it was really, I can't remember a time when someone around me wasn't telling me that I was special. Like that's really it. Like, so there wasn't always a majority of people around me telling me I was special, telling me I could do, but there were always people around me. I mentioned I had 3 kindergarten teachers. I had Marie Booker, I had Jean Folks, and I had Brenda Barner, who's now Brenda Mead. Those three, and they lived in my neighborhood. And those folks, I already talked about what they gave to me. My mother, Karan Duncan, my grandmother, Jacqueline Harris, I tell you what they gave to me. My cousin Shane White, my aunt Case. Like I could go down the list of folks as a 5-year-old who, when folks were pouring into me. When I was 10, I had people who were pouring into me, and sometimes it was the older kids in my neighborhood or the older young people in my neighborhood, the young adults, who sometimes said, "Hey, Damon, the rest of us are going to go do this. You need to go do that." Right? Like so
Mm.
your path is going to be is going to deviate from some of ours. Go do this over here while we're doing that on the left.
Wow. So people saw you before you saw you, but it helped push you to see you, it sounds like, in terms of your trajectory.
Yeah, I think the same way that people pushed me in a direction where they thought it would be good for me to go. I think I always did that for my friends as well. And I think I always did that for my family as well. I think that was just a sense of community in where I grew up. And from what I've heard, that's the community. I've been around the country now for the last 10 years or so. And folks, everywhere I've been, folks have said that's how it was in my community. Right? We all looked out for each other. We all pushed each other in good directions. When I got my doctorate, I still get together with some of my childhood friends
Wow.
once a year on the anniversary of one of us who passed away, his birthday. And every summer, our neighborhood gets together. It's like a bunch of little kids now, and it's all of us. I mean, my neighborhood was large. It's 30, 40 of us like in the neighborhood, and it's in my little couple of blocks. And one of them said at one of those events back in 2014, 15, when I was 14, when I just got my doctorate, he said in front of everybody, "Hey, everybody, we're gonna clap. We're gonna pat Dame on the back, but I feel like we all got that doctorate because
Mm.
we all pushed him to be great." Right?
Mm.
And so it was a really like that moment is another one that exemplifies like how I can't remember a time when people weren't telling me that they love me and they support me. And I can't remember a time now, and now I won't let a time go by where I don't try to send that message to someone else, that I love them and I support them and that they're special as well, because
That's a
that's just what we're supposed to do.
And that's a beautiful microcosm that I don't think a lot of us, all of us, don't grow up in communities like that, right? And what we know definitely is that not all students come from
Mm-hmm.
those communities, right? So
Mm-hmm.
let's kind of shift this, because what you did say though is that was kindergarten was the time where you felt it outside home. So I am so happy for you. Like, I think that it says so much about what you've been able to do, having so much poured into you and having this consistency in home, in community. But what happened in school that changed that for you? Like, what are some of those memories where you stopped feeling that same kind of pouring into you as a student?
Yeah. So if I count kindergarten as one of my schools, because I went to kindergarten in the community center in which I grew up, Hilltop Lutheran Neighborhood Center, just celebrated, I don't know, 50 years? No, a little more than that, because we just had a gala, a fundraising gala a couple weeks ago. So shout out to Hilltop in Wilmington, Delaware. You ought to go there and support. Like you can get online, you can support Hilltop Lutheran Neighborhood Center. But so if you count Hilltop as my kindergarten space, I was in 3 elementary schools, and I went to 2 middle schools, and I went to 2 high schools. So I left my community after kindergarten to go to different spaces. And I think I don't think I was received in the same way. I don't think kids like me were always received in the same way in some of the other spaces in that I went to. And I think that the message that I had from kindergarten is what sustained me through those times. Um, I, I don't know. Like there were, I can remember I was just telling my wife about a 4th grade teacher that I had we moved to fourth grade, and there's a teacher at Miss Brown at Tyler Heights Elementary School in Anne Arundel County Public Schools in Maryland. I
Mm.
was in Anne Arundel schools for like 3 years, a couple elementary grades and one part of middle school grade. And there, when I got to her room, in the other spaces, people were just kind of, overlooking me. Maybe I was in the high reading group, but that was kind of that. And when I got to that school in fourth grade, I came middle of the year, and she said, "Wait, man, hey!" And I was telling my wife, she said, "You are pretty smart, like, and you are pretty savvy. I think you ought to be doing more. I think you ought to be pushing yourself harder." Like, but there were just pockets of people who were
Mm.
just enough to like push me a little bit, and as my wheels give me some momentum, and as my wheels start slowing down, there was another person that was placed in my life to push me a little bit further, to say, "Hey, you know what? I think you are a little bit, you should be doing a little bit more than that." No, and Heidi Beck, who's the director, center director of at Hilltop Lutheran Neighborhood Center. She ran the Latchkey program and some other things with the youth program. She was one of those other folks that was like, "Hey, you should be doing more. You could be doing this. You could be doing that," and just pushed me along and said, "You could be great. Why aren't you?"
Mm.
And so let's get moving. And I could name a million other folks. Jay Street, who also worked at the neighborhood center at Hilltop. Yeah, there are just so many people in my life who've done this, who've done that. And in schools, I don't know. I just didn't feel like people. I just felt like I was just kind of there to make it through the day and just keep moving. I don't feel like people pushed me to be great. I don't feel like people demonstrated that there was an expectation for me to be great. I don't know why, right? Like, because I didn't have the lens at that point to pay attention to evidence that I could point to say this is why this was what it
Mm.
is.
Mm.
I just know that when I look back on it, I didn't feel it, right? And you notice that the quote that Maya Angelou was credited as
I was just telling my daughter that quote the other day.
so I don't know. I don't know what they said or did, right? I just know how I felt.
And it
Right?
wasn't seen or valued, right? Like that's the piece, right? But I think again, you speak to the testament and the importance of that. So all of this, I mean, obviously now you are leading educators and you are transforming schools and you have a track record of some amazing things. But what then led you to even become an educator? Was it a direct path, or what was your path to getting to education?
Yeah. So no, wasn't as direct as I would have liked. So when I went to undergrad to work on my bachelor's degree, I had a basketball scholarship offer to a small school, and then I had an academic scholarship offer to a larger school. And I chose to go for reasons why, again, some greatness stuff that somebody didn't see in me. Chose not to play basketball. I chose to go the academic route. And when I did, I went as a business major because I didn't want to be poor anymore. And I saw people who were in business, they weren't poor. So that was really that. And so when I got to undergrad, it didn't go so well, and I got kicked out. Right. And when I came back to my neighborhood, defeated and trying to figure it out, and at my community center, Hilltop.
Hilltop. We
Hey,
had a good shout out to Hilltop. Hilltop has come on
yeah,
a lot,
that's
right?
it. I had my first job ever there,
I
besides
love.
paper boy stuff, and I was a summer camp counselor. And so I went there and said, come work and work in the latchkey program with us. So you can be there with kids, the before and after care program. So I did that while I was kicked out. And in the meantime, I was just trying to figure it out. And Heidi Beck, who was running that program when I was a latchkey assistant, she said, "Damon, you do really well with the kids and their families. Have you ever thought about being a teacher?" And I said, "No, I hadn't."
Mm.
And she said, "Well, you should give it some thought, right? Like, because you got to do something. Like you can't stay here all the time. You
Right.
got to go do something. Like you can do
That
more.
greatness. Come on, now you gotta go
Right.
put it to work.
You can do more. You gotta make space for the next person in this space, right? Like, so go do something. And guy up the street who lived up the street from me, his name was Terrell. And Terrell, I won't use his last name because I don't know if he wants me to say him, but Terrell he was in the education program at University of Delaware. And that's where I had gotten kicked out. And I said to him, "Hey man, Heidi said I should look into becoming a teacher." He said, "I tell you what," he said, "Hey man, it's cool. I like what I'm doing so far." He was in undergrad. He said, "I'll introduce you to the man who was in the Aspire program. It was a program for Black education majors. His name was James Shaw." Right. And so Terrell got me on the phone with Mr. Shaw. And man, he talked to me and said, "I think your head seems like it's in the right space right now. So let me come out and talk to you. I want to see you for myself." He came out to the community center. He met with me. He talked to me, and he said, "I'm going to help you. So you want to be an education major? I'm going to help you get back into school." He helped me get back into school. He helped me get back grants that were equivalent to my scholarship. So my mother still didn't have to pay. And I was able to go through the Aspire program, get the support of that program, become a teacher, and leave Hilltop as latchkey supervisor when I left, thanks to Heidi and Mr. Street and a bunch of other folks. And when I left and got my degree, and I became an educator because people around me were pushing me along. Always, always, always.
Always, always, always. I mean, and that is such a powerful continuation of a trajectory, even when there were some, like, and that's what it is. They're bumps on the road, right? They're bumps on the road. We can always get back when we know who we are, when we are confident in who we are, when we feel that strength internally, and people keep pouring it back into you, right? Like that running theme of everything that you're talking about. So you got into education, and at some point you felt the need to go beyond just, and you've got a lot of different roles that you've had starting as a teacher, but you've gone through a lot of different roles. Tell me about the moments and the thing that really was the catalyst for you to be like, "Nah, I got to do more in education to change things happening here."
So there were probably a couple of different times. But there was certainly when I was within my first 5 years of teaching. I was teaching second grade in Baltimore County Public Schools in Maryland, and I was just trying to figure it out. And I felt like I use this analogy. Someone just reminded me of this recently that I told someone that I used to mentor, that I felt like I was stumbling around in the dark during my first year of teaching.
Didn't we all? Point in education.
Oh man. And my principal at the time, Maria Hoffman, and she said, "Daman," like, because a lot of people thought like my students were quiet, and the kids were quiet, lined up straight in the hallway and stuff. Like, people thought, okay, this guy, he's the first year, but he's doing really well. And I had a bunch of activities going on in my classroom. And Maria said to me, she said, "Daman, these kids will run through fire for you, but you are not teaching them anything."
Ooh, how'd that sit with you? That's a hard one to take, right?
It was so true, right? Like, and like I felt it, right? And but I didn't know how much of that was imposter syndrome versus, because I'm looking at other people from the hallway view too. Like, I'm not really in other people's classrooms, and but like that piece for me was because the families from that community, many of them would say like, "Hey, we want our kids with you," right? Because of the way kids felt, right? But not because of that they were learning from me yet. Right. And that when she said that rang a bell for me, because she said, you can be there. You can be great. You just aren't right now. So I need you to work at it. And here's what I need you to do. Right. So it wasn't like you are not good, we're going to throw you away. It was you're not good yet, right? You have good aspects of your management, but you are not good at this instruction piece. So we're going to make this better for you and for these kids. That piece for me let me know that I had to be better for the students in my classroom. It wasn't until a few years later where someone else from central office came in and said, and I was better. I wasn't great, but I was better, 4 or 5 years in. And I was in the same room, and somebody from central office came by and said, you could be doing more for everybody in the school and not just for the kids in your classroom. And that I don't remember her name, but that changed my thinking. And Principal Ms. Hoffman had said too, sometimes at one point you're going to look at administration, you're going to want to go do that. And I said, nah, I'm just trying to figure it out in this classroom. And she said, but you want to do more, right? And if you want to do more, affect more, you're going to need to leave the classroom in order to do that. And at the time, I thought that's what I had to do. I've since learned that you can definitely make a difference from the classroom and make it on a global scale while still being in the classroom. I see that in like my brother Kenneth Smith, who's doing that every day and every month and week, and the work that he does in Montgomery County schools in Maryland. But so I went from that space to thinking I could do more for a school, and I left that school I was in, my first school ever after 5 years. I just went to the job fair and I walked up to the principal at the school where I lived. I didn't have kids at the time. My wife and I lived. And I said, I want to make change in my community. So I want to see what it looks like in your building. And he said, I tell you, let's talk about it. And we walked around the job fair and just talked for, I don't know how long. His name was Ed Cozzolino. He was a really strong presence in Maryland and at the administrative level at the time. And he said, I have a position that I'm creating right now that is going to be a school-wide position that we're calling student support specialist, that you're going to get to work with all the teachers, all the kids, all the parents in our building. And that's your neighborhood. You can make change as much as you want. As much as you want to work, that's how much change you can make in this position I can create for you. I said, sign me up. And in that space, I was able to work with 500 kids. I don't know how much at Shady Spring Elementary in Baltimore County in Rosedale. So I've shout them out too. They're still my folks. Joyce Moran is still my folks. There's a bunch of folks there, still my folks. But those like that showed me I could change at a school level. I could have some effect. And while I was in that position, there was a time where I sat around the conference room table, and I saw how Ed had left the school. He had retired, I think, but he left, and I saw how when we're sitting around the table, I always defer to the principal, and the principal always deferred to the people from central office in terms of expertise for things. Okay, I get it. And then I saw in this role I was in how the people from central office, they would defer to some consultants who would come in, Dr. So-and-so's. And it's like, hey, like, why am I listening to this person when like they're not with us every day? I don't get it. They're not connecting with me. They're not connecting with the families. They're not connecting with my kids. And the guy next to me, Richard Manolfi, he was my coworker that we were partners. We were tight in this role. He was a social worker in that school. And he said, it's because they got a doctorate. Do you have a doctorate?
Oh,
no.
Okay.
No, I don't. They said, okay. Are you going to go get one or are you going to stay here? And that was like, you're right. You're right. And so I went to do that. And I could tell you how I got into the University of Maryland for that, because somebody else was, looked out for me to say, I think you can do this. His name was Dennis Hirschbach. one of the professors at University of Maryland. Like I could go on and on with, when I get to this space, somebody says this. When I get to this space, somebody else says that. So I'm a fast forward because I'm taking up all your time. You only asked me like one question.
Well, no, I'm gonna push you forward actually, because I want to know. No, we're gonna fast forward because but this is great because I think also this is the story, right? It didn't happen overnight, but it's happened in pieces, and you've seen things, and that's really the big thing to me is like you've seen how things function and how things dysfunction, right? So and your book is really about that, right? It's about shifting that dysfunction. So I want to know when you really started to recognize how that dysfunction can be different when it comes to our students, right? Going back to like the whole story of what you know is the power of education, what you knew you took away from it, and you want to give that to students. You want to give that community to families, right? And I do see some comments in here. I want to make sure we honor the chat because Sonia is in here. Thank you, Dr. Sonia. I love it. This is why Daman is such a servant leader. This all makes sense to me now, right? So this is the story. It's the power of community. Absolutely, right? Wow, Ed is such a solid leader and still doing amazing work. Leadership, I love that. So we got a common familiar name in here that Dr. Sonia Matthew knows as well. So that's awesome. All right, so Daman, right? Like there's a lot of things that happen, right? When we're talking about central office, we're talking about the district and people who are going into schools, but not in the schools directly on a daily basis. And they come with knowledge. We know that, right?
But I happen to be one of them now.
Right. I do too. Right. Like I've been for 9 years, right? They come with knowledge. It's not that they don't.
Yeah.
However, it sounds like what you see and what you've been seeing is that we can go in-house and make the change we need to with the people that are there on boots on the ground, daily, doing the work, knowing the families, knowing the students. And what is it that really launched you to be like, that's where the work is happening?
I'm not sure I figured that out yet. So because I don't know, because I've certainly not pulled the right levers and pushed the right buttons to make everything fixed. So I'm not sure I figured out what it is that the thing that I need to actually do. I do know that I need to keep saying the word anti-racism. Like I do know that that's my role, and at this point in my life. Right? There are people who can't say that. There are people who are either afraid to say it, or there are people who it's illegal, right, in their state,
right,
to say that word in front of students or in the curriculum,
right?
Yeah. Like so, I do know that that's my role, but and that part has really sort of surfaced over the last 3-4 years with the backlash to anti-racist work, where now a lot of folks are running away from it. But I think I keep meeting people who keep saying, have you thought about this? Like, have you thought about it from this way? And the more I read, the more I consult with folks, the more I get into spaces with community like you here, the more I learn, and I'll likely something you say to me tonight or someone in the chat will say to me tonight, it's going to spark another thought for me to be like, you know what, I probably should sort of turn my direction just a little bit more toward this because of these conversations. But so I'll say this though, for the school, like in terms of this anti-racism work, this was when I read Ibram Kendi's The Anti-Racist, How to Be an Anti-Racist. And I said to my assistant principal at the time, I was an elementary school principal. And what I said to my assistant principal at the time was, I'm different after reading this. I see the world differently. I used to think of myself at like Ibram Kendi's frame of you're either racist, you're either anti-racist, or you're contributing to the problem. Like there is no other way, right? You're either being racist or you're not. or you're anti-racist. There's no not racist space. So
Mm-hmm.
either fighting for what's right or you're not. And that's a minute by minute sort of determination. That's a day by day and activity by activity determination. And so I said to her, we're going to do something different starting, as soon as I can figure out how to plan it, we're going to start doing something different. And I told my boss at the time, and I'm not naming some of these other folks because they may not want me naming them.
Sorry,
These
tell the story. You don't
conversations.
have to have names.
But yeah,
We can quote the story.
But I told my boss at the time, I said, like, I read this book. I'm thinking differently now. I'm a different person, which means I'm a different leader. And I need you with me because this is what I'm doing. And I'm ready to get fired over this. Right. And she said, well, we don't need to do that. Like, we're good. You can do this. You can do this anti-racist work. But you're going to need to talk to me about what it looks like. And I didn't have clarity about that. And so I really had to educate myself over the fall semester and think through, okay, like who are the thinkers in this field? Who designs activities? Like what am I supposed to be doing with this work? Where should my mind be? And I was really trying to figure that out, and came up with some ideas around what I wanted to do. And in January of that year, this was 2020, January 2020. And I said to my staff, hey, like here's where we are, right? Like it used to be okay to me that we all just love kids. That used to be fine. And that we were just trying to figure it out. And I said that I showed them something I show in the book, line graph that shows, line graphs show change over time. And I showed the line that said, here's the top line, here's the middle, the second line, third line, fourth line, fifth line. I said, if we think about these as years going across the bottom, and we think about this as whatever the positive outcomes are in school are there. Graduation rates, AP exam scores, you name it, whatever's up there, GPA, GT, percentage of GT kids, which kid, if we thought each one of those lines represented a different racial or ethnic group, I don't need to tell you which one, which group is represented by which, for you not to have a really good idea of which group is at the bottom or the bottom two of all the good categories that we have in education. And I said, those kids represent the kids in our school, because our school was primarily Black and Hispanic. Those kids represent kids who were poor or lower socioeconomic status. Like those kids were our kids. They're the bottom of all the good categories in our district and in our country. Now, if we flipped it, kept the same graph and just said negative outcomes, dropout rates, suspensions, percentages, special ed, that our kids, I don't need to tell you which ones are which, right? Our kids are at the top. I said, and it's been like that, like in my reading, it's been like that for 100 years, right? On my watch, on our watch, it's been like this. So we, at this point, we have to make a determination that this is either more of, it's not all of anything, but this is either more about deficits in our kids and their families, which are recreating these, what I call them stagnant demographic hierarchies, right? Like it's either deficits in our kids and their families that are creating these, or it's more about a system that churns out exactly what it's designed to churn out year after year. And at this point, I spent my whole career trying to fix holes in kids and families. I ain't never touched the system. And that's where we're going. So it used to be okay that we just love kids. It's not anymore, right? That's necessary. It's insufficient. We now know that this, like if we're going to choose whether it's kids and families deficits or deficits in our system, we're going to choose the latter. And that's where we're rolling. in our school. And I said, here's how we're going to get there. I'm starting to shape this vision. Come help me shape it. And I'm telling you now, in January, because transfer season opens up end of the month. So if this isn't your cup of tea, I get it. And I might not be right. I might not be, but I'm in charge right now. So this is where we're going. And so I think that in my book, and so I went from like trying to figure out what I was doing and how I was like educating myself on this content to casting the vision over those next few months to my staff about what was going on. And later I cast it to my community about what we were going to do, because sometimes people think, oh, he's focusing on anti-racism. That means he's not focusing on achievement. No, those two things are inseparable,
interlocking, right? But
and then it did happen that the George Floyd and pandemic and stuff like that got in the way a little bit. Like, well, it didn't get it threw some curveballs. But the book itself is the Antiracist School Leader. I wrote this book as an example because folks would say to me when I would go out and talk about like us trying to make change and what we're going to do, so, well, how do I do that? Like, how do I make a change? Where should I go? How did you do this? So I wrote about our experiences in my school with this book and said, first thing you need to do is the first thing I did. Educate yourself. And then commit to the topic, right? Commit to the work. And that's chapter 1.
Chapter 1. But there's so many pieces in there. And thank you. And I appreciate you giving that connection, right? Because it is back from like those mindsets, right? And so many of us, because of going back to socialization and socialization, even as educators, right, have been told that it is about fixing students, right? And there's a big mindset shift to recognizing, now we got to fix the systems. And to your point, we are the system. Right? We are the system. So we got to fix ourselves, know ourselves, do that internal understanding and work. So it's learning, but what do it's right. We're learning history, we're learning knowledge, but we're also learning ourselves. And you definitely do talk about that, right? That exploration and that understanding. And I love you say it like we got to say anti-racism. And I love that the way that you've set this up is there's so much vocabulary development, which is so important because there's definitely so much misconstrued when we're not speaking the same language about the same things. And that's powerful and so important. I want to pick up on a couple of pieces of the book because you talked about that you did this yourself. There was a particular chapter that I'd like to hear a little bit more about, because I think this is the place where a lot of people who want to do this work but get stuck. And I want to also read, I'm actually going to first start with reading something you said in the book, which I appreciate because I think sometimes we don't always start where we need to start, right? And you said this book is sometimes well-meaning teachers and leaders can sense the systemic inequities that their students confront, but they may not be able to put their fingers on precisely what to blame. Notice that I did not say who, because this book isn't about blaming people. It's about examining systems. Other times, educators know the problematic issues, but they might not know how to marshal the resources of their school communities to combat multiple systems of oppression. This book is for them, the educators who sense or know that something is wrong, but aren't sure what they can do. This book isn't for, and this is the part, right? People who need to be convinced that racism and white supremacy impact teaching and learning. So we are right out the gate saying, we're not debating that. We're not debating whether or not there's predictability in our data, because we know there is. We're not debating whether or not the systems have not been working for all our students, right? Yeah. And we're not having this debate. What we know is that the system is broken. How are we gonna fix it? And that's it. This is it. This is the book. How are we gonna fix it? And I love that. So what I wanted to bring to is this point, because many people are there. And I know there's a lot of folks watching. If you're not watching now, you're watching the rebroadcast, and make sure that you like, you comment, you share, and you subscribe. But also, you have a chapter called Encourage and Embrace resistance, because that is the place where I think many people are stuck, right? They like, I know this has to happen, but how do I get all those? Like, I got these 6 people, but these 5 people over here, right? They're like, nah,
Yeah.
I'm going to close my door and I'm going to do what I do, right? Like, so what does that look like? And the language you chose, encourage and embrace resistance. Tell me more about that and where you see that being one of those steps to truly get to this sustained change.
Yeah, I think in all spaces where you have group dynamics, like doesn't matter whether we're talking anti-racism or if you're talking IT or AI servers, building a server farm or somewhere, like if it's in your business, in order to get, if you're a Navy SEAL, even like I was reading a book about how Navy SEALs they all push each other's thinking, when they're planning and when they're doing the after action reports, etc. But you get better when everybody's ideas are represented, right? Like there's the old saying, the proverb is that no one person's, the smartest person in the room is always the room, right?
Mm.
So one of us is not smarter than all of us. So your idea gets better when you embrace, when you tell everybody like your ideas are welcome, because I might not be right. I mean, that is it. So I am good with you pushing back on me. Now, we're not going to argue about some things that we're just going to have some agreed upon truths, right? Like I ain't arguing about you. I ain't arguing with you about if the sky's blue. Like we ain't doing that, right? Like so. But if we can talk about why I see it as blue, right? Like through the lens of my eyes or whatever. We can go down that path. But when you are in school leadership or any kind of leadership, there are always going to be people who are going to push back on your thinking. And if there isn't, then you ought to check your leadership style, because people are pushing back. They're just not saying it to you.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to make sure that you are ready to pull people in. Francesca Gino, I know she got into a little bit of trouble in the last couple of years, but she wrote a book called Rebel Talent, and I reference it in the book where she studied a bunch of different organizations and said, like, when you have resistance, like people, those folks bring intellectual curiosity. Those folks bring creativity. Those folks bring innovation. Those folks bring energy. Like you want dissent. You want people to poke holes in your ideas. That makes your ideas stronger. So that is awesome. Now, you don't want those ideas or that resistance to be blockades to the work.
Mm-hmm.
But they can surface obstacles that you might need to address, which I think are just fine. Now, in the book, I reference like some sample types of things, because sometimes folks, just be okay with that. Like be okay with people questioning what you do. If your idea is strong, that won't matter. It'll just make your idea that much stronger. Now, when you are in leadership, and I say leadership broadly because anybody who wants to exercise influence in your space, you're a leader.
Mm-hmm.
So I ain't talking just to the principals and the superintendents and the like I'm talking to everybody who wants to make change, parents, students, everybody who wants to make change. You're a leader. Here's some ways you can do that, from my perspective. And I list a table of things where I say, sometimes people, if somebody says this, here's a counter move that you can use to address that type of resistance, right? Like if somebody says, hey, I don't believe in that there's racism against Black people. And I was in Accra, Ghana at a conference in July, and someone said in the space, man, this was 2 summers, it doesn't matter when, but it was in Africa, in Accra. And we're sitting in a conference and we're facilitating this. Somebody said, why is it that there's been such underrepresentation of success with Black students, Black Americans over there in the US? And the person said, well, a lot of it has to do with racism. And that person said, wait, I didn't think they had racism anymore. Right? Like an African said that about, here in the US, it didn't know. Right. And I've heard folks just in my building as a principal and even since and before, folks said, well, I don't really think that the system set up. I think the system advantages Black people or brown people or other kinds of people who are non-white.
that's currently what we're hearing everywhere, right? Like that's what
Yeah,
there's a shutdown
yeah,
of all opportunities and positions,
yeah,
right?
yeah. And so I push that to say, like, you can respond. One of the ways you can help people see that is by talking to them in an intersectional lens. Right. So I wrote about this in Larry Filazzo's column in Education Week just this week, saying you can use intersectionalism to intersectionality
Can you
to
break
address.
down that for all of our non-educators here so everyone's clear
Absolutely,
on language and lingo?
absolutely. And so intersectionality, what we're thinking about is how you can be someone who is marginalized. We all have a bunch of different identities. Right. So I'm not just a man or a teacher. I'm also Black. I'm also somebody who's an English speaker, somebody who's a US citizen. It's a bunch of different identities that I have. And so some of those intersect in ways that advantage me in our society, and some in that disadvantage me in our society. And one of those ways, when I talk to people who don't have an idea, or who have an idea that Black or anti-dark racism doesn't exist, or white supremacy doesn't exist, particularly when I'm in education spaces are primarily dominated by women. And so, at least at the elementary level where I was. So what I say to them often is, have you noticed that your experiences with discrimination as a woman, like, there's you've seen some, right? Like, we have 80% of our teachers are women, but not 80% of our principals.
Mm, mm.
Like, do you see, like, why do you think that is? Well, women, they don't have, they're ready to articulate the checklist of why society is set up
Their
against their
intersections,
group.
their oppressions, and the groups of their intersections.
Right. And so I said yes. And what I wrote in the book once about an experience that my wife and I had at a winery out in California, where I got to pour the guy poured this server poured our drinks, and I said, "Oh, look, he gave me more than you." And I took a sip, and she said, "Yeah, he did that all the other times too. Sexism. It's hilarious." And I said, "Oh, wait, I didn't know." I said, "Wait, we need to talk." No, we do not need to talk to him about it, right? Like this, we're not going to ruin our time here with this experience,
Mhm.
but just know that this exists. As a matter of fact, write that in your book, right? Because I was working on this book at the time, and so I included it in the book. But I use that same sexism lens with some other folks, and I'm able to help them see that it's hard for us, because I say I don't see the obstacles you face as a woman in the work that you're doing. I'm privileged as a man in a lot of ways in our society, so I don't see those things. It's hard for me to see the obstacles that you face, right?
Mm.
It's hard
Yeah.
for me to see obstacles I don't face. All of us. So when you say that you don't see the racism, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist, right? Like that. So part of that is like how you can respond. In chapter 4, I outline a few different ways. This way, sometimes people put, well, what do I do when people shout angry stuff in public spaces, right? We had public forums, we had the back to school nights, or we're at the school board meetings, and so from there, you can ask people, like, to ask them measured questions, right? Like, so wait a minute, I'd like to learn more about your perspective. Tell me the evidence that you use it to come to that determination. Maybe I'll have the same one, right?
And I mean, and I think everything you're posing is powerful in that it's not to create division and divisiveness, but truthfully, how do we get to unity by hearing each other, by having some real measured conversations and asking questions and curiosity, not
Mhm.
assumption. But also there's some ways to leverage that, right? Like there's a way to make people see things that they don't see, and to recognize that sometimes they don't because they just never have had to,
Yep.
right? You didn't notice the pores.
Yep.
You didn't notice the pores until she said something, right? And then you're ready to change it. But like, yeah, see, you're happily enjoying your drinks, right? But that's exactly, I love that analogy, and I think it's so powerful. And that is right what you're doing. So the book has so much gems, so much great work. Thank you. Like, I love this. And I know before we go, I just want to connect. I mean, because we are at time. But I know there's so much more work that you do. I want to give you an opportunity to share more of your projects, more of the things you're doing. You mentioned Avragana. I mean, do you want to tell us a little bit about what you're doing there? You just tweeted some great information about a school that you're working with, elementary school, and building leadership in students. So tell us a little bit about that and anything else that's going on with you.
So the Ghana ASCD or ASCD Ghana, they host a conference every year called the International Educators Summit. And a bunch of us from the US go over to Africa, and we talk to folks over there about the work that they're doing, and we compare it to the work that we're doing here. We try to help each other grow. From that, I got a chance to talk with a number of school leaders or organization leaders to talk about the work that they're doing there and how we can reach back over there to support. And so sometimes it looks like me writing a lesson plan, or the Bond Project, writing lesson plans for professional learning over there and across. We've done that. Yesterday, I did a virtual session as a member of the Bond Project to at a different setting for a group called Leading Well Ghana, who's doing some work to support teachers who are there and trying to help them grow. Many of them have high school educations, and they need more professional learning. So we can do this in our setting. We're good with doing virtual stuff now. Virtual looks a little different over there, but that stuff is a part of what we're doing. But I need you to go on bondeducators.org. You can learn all about some of the things that the Bond Project is doing. This week, we will launch our registration for and call for proposals for our annual Bond Academy, which is our conference from April 24th through April 26th, 2026 at Bowie State University. bondeducators.org.
And get those tickets early because they sell out. Okay. Yeah. Like, every year, I got to say, well, we got Troy Body right here in this picture. Dr. Troy Body was a guest on the show. And if you want to learn more about specifics of the Bond Project, please go and watch my interview with Dr. Daryl Howard, who is also one of the co-founders, and he breaks it down. We were talking about the book today, so we didn't talk about Bond, but Bond is on here in Pain to Power because it is certainly a space. It is something that it is a project that is powerful and empowering so many and leaders. I love it. And Dr. Sonia Matt says, excellent session. Thank you both for making this possible. Peace, love, and respect. I'm so honored to be connected. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you to Just One Love and to Ja Logic. I saw you in there in the chat. Thank you to everyone. Please make sure that you are following Dr. Daman Harris. Go and get his book if you're an educator. And I mean, even if you're not, like, I feel like there's so much great information in here in our current times of understanding how do we just stand up as leaders in changing the things around us, in seeing our roles and our opportunities. If you can't make it to a protest, there are other ways to still make change, to show that you are an ally, to show that you are working to be actively anti-racist, because it is a constant decision that we are making, right? Thank you so much again, Daman. Thank you to my amazing producer, Mr. Montaigne Massick, and thank you to the iRant Network, which the show is in association with. Please make sure, if you haven't done it yet, that you have subscribed to this channel, Brown Girl Interrupting. You have liked this video. Hit that little link back there. It does all you got to do, and share a comment. What resonated with you? One little thought about what is hitting you, what you have questions about. Let us know. Share a comment. It goes a long way in these algorithms, folks. You know, we are trying to push these algorithms in all the ways that happen. And you can check out Dr. Daman Harris. Where do we check you out? All the places.
Find me on LinkedIn, DamanHarris, and you can find me on my website, DamanHarris.com, DamanHarris.com.
All right. There we go. Please make sure you are following Dr. Daman Harris. He's doing some amazing work, making some transformational changes. And follow me. I'm Brown Girl Interrupting. I have lots of things. The show itself every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And courses that have been launched, and I am starting some new cohorts in November, very soon, November 6th, as well as in January, on January 22nd. So don't miss the the current price of $49 for 5 weeks of guided sessions with me talking about socialization and patterns when it comes to our individual healing, which also impacts the way we show up, whether we are leaders or we are learning to be leaders in our lives and in the people's lives that we impact. So thank you so much. Again, thank you, Dr. Daman Harris. I appreciate you being here and sharing your story.
Great to be with you, sis.
Peace, love, and life. Thank you, Dr. Howard. Great convo, family. Appreciate you tuning in and checking in. And encore, right? We got to have more conversation because we have so much to talk about. All right. Peace, love, and light. Please make sure that you subscribe, like, comment, share.